Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Fundraising, the official podcast from the Chartered Institute of Fundraising, the charity that champions a lifetime of impact, a career in fundraising. From your very first fundraising role to decades of experience in the sector, this is the podcast that gets into the conversations that really matter. The challenges facing fundraisers today, the opportunities, and everything in between. I'm Tim Beynon, and every month I'm joined by a guest co-host and some fantastic voices from across the fundraising world to dig into what's really going on in our sector right now. And in the co-host chair with me for this episode, I'm delighted to welcome Lucinda Frostick, Director of Remember a Charity, as we get ready for Remember a Charity Week in September, and as we use this episode to take a close look at legacy giving in the UK today. Lucinda, I'm so pleased you could join us, especially as I'm pretty sure it must be a hugely busy time of year for Remember a Charity. How are you doing?
Thanks, Tim. All well, thank you. And thank you so much for having me on the show today. Obviously, it's a really exciting time as we get closer to Remember a Charity Week. And I'm delighted to be here and to have that opportunity to open up the conversation around something that I feel really passionate about, which is, of course, legacy fundraising and legacy giving.
Absolutely. And there's lots to dig into today. And we've got a great interview coming up with Kay Harrison from About Loyalty and Victoria Friar from Air Ambulance Kent, Surrey and Sussex, who I talked to back at Fundraising Convention following a fascinating session they gave that explored the state of legacy giving today and how consistent engagement with your supporters and taking the time to say thank you can make a huge difference when it comes to encouraging them to leave a legacy in their will. So stay tuned for that. And if you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe to the show on your usual podcast platform. And do please leave us a rating so other fundraisers can find us. It just takes a few seconds, but really does make a big difference. So Lucinda, before we hear from Kay and Vix, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about Remember a Charity and Remember a Charity Week, which is happening between the 7th and the 13th of September.
Thank you, Tim. Yes, well, Remember a Charity is, of course, a behaviour change campaign. A campaign with one singular focus, which is very much about growing and normalising legacy giving across the UK. What started as a movement of just a handful of fundraising directors about 25 years ago has grown into a movement of now 200 charities, large and small, all shapes and sizes, bridging all kinds of causes. And we're really proud to work not only with our charity members, but also together with hundreds of professional advisors, government and partners to really nurture the UK legacy environment. We do this through a range of different activities. We run consumer campaigns all year round, really focused on inspiring more people to remember charities in their wills. We work with professional advisors. By that, I mean solicitors, will writers, wealth advisors, estate planners, you name it, to inspire them to really normalise that charitable message within will writing. That is obviously so crucial in making legacy giving a natural and prominent part of estate planning and normalising legacy growth. We talked also about lobbying activity. That's really important to us. And of course, so too is working with our charity members, working with them to really help them grow their legacy fundraising, their legacy income, which has become such an important part of voluntary income across the UK to an increasing number of charities. And you very kindly asked about Remember Charity Week. Well, that's always such an exciting moment. All our activity really does come to a head in September, where we run the National Awareness Week for Charitable Legacies. This year it runs from the 7th to the 13th of September. What does that mean? We'll be launching our new ad and PR campaigns, really aiming to open up discussion about legacies during the week. But I often think that perhaps the most important part of that week and the really key value is that it's an activation moment for our entire network. This is a moment where we can get more voices, we can get government, we can get professional advisors, solicitors, will writers, wealth advisors, and more to share their passion for legacies and inspire more people to remember gifts in wills.
Fantastic. What a really important week. And listen, we love a stat on this show. We love diving into stats. And as I understand it, the last couple of years have seen record amounts donated through people's wills to thousands of charities across the UK, which is amazing. And that figure stands at around £4.5 billion a year, which is a massive sum of money. Tell me, what's driving that growth? And do you think it's likely to continue?
So you're absolutely right. Legacies have been such a huge success story here in the UK, but I also think it's really important to just take a moment and remember that it's also such a meaningful way of giving. It's not growing for no reason. It's growing because it's something that people really do want to do. And charities are getting better at talking about it as well, which is so important too. So over the years, we've seen that income grow steadily with more and more charities being named in wills. And as a result, charities are now in this fortunate position where we're becoming more and more able to rely on that income. You asked about the legacy drivers, and I find that a really interesting discussion, because many of the key drivers for legacy growth are, of course, those things that we can't control, the economic factors, house and share prices, and so on. The small number of high value gifts, that's where you see just a small proportion of very large legacies really being able to create quite a sizable shift in terms of legacy income across the whole sector. But when it comes to those facets that perhaps we can change, that's really boils down to the propensity of giving. We can't control the demographics, how many people are dying each year, the size of different generations come through. But what we can influence and what we can do is inspire more and more people to choose to leave gifts to the charities they love in their wills, alongside their loved ones, of course. And I think that's where it's really exciting. And for us at Remember a Charity, that's what's so crucial. We know we can't influence the economy, if only we could, but we can inspire more people to remember the charities they love. And that's absolutely where our core focus is.
Fantastic stuff. And I think we talk a lot on this show, and we talk generally about the state of the nation in terms of fundraising. There's no doubt about it. All the reports, all the research shows that as a nation, we are a very generous, philanthropic, charitable nation. We do like to give. And looking at the stats, more than 1 in 5 people, around 22% in the UK, now leave a gift to charity in their will, which is fantastic. But what's it going to take? You talk about ambition, talk about everything that's coming up in Remember a Charity Week. What's it going to take to move that needle further?
That's such a good question. I think ultimately, we have seen over the last few years some really positive indicators that growth continues slowly, steadily. And that's what we're looking for. Back in 2010, about 14% of charity supporters aged 40 plus had left a gift. Sorry, you said you liked stats, so here we go. Over the years, that shifted to around 18% in 2015. And now, as you said, around 22% today. And above that, there are many more people that are planning to do so, but haven't yet got round to writing their wills. So I think we're heading in the right direction. And the key message perhaps is to continue what we're doing, both collectively and also as individual charities. So I think individually for charities, that means just keeping that legacy conversation alive, sharing the incredible impact of gifts in wills with supporters, really communicating the key work that you do, nurturing those supporter relationships and helping them see legacy giving as a really very natural continuation of their lifetime giving journey. It's nothing different. It's a continuation, but often that decision to give does come in perhaps a little bit earlier than people might be expecting. So that's something to be aware of. And then for us within Remember a Charity, it's that collective movement. What are those different anchor points where we can ensure that legacy giving conversation is front of mind, whether that's with professional advisors, whether that's in will writing software, or whether that's through our consumer campaigns. So lots of opportunities to keep that good progress moving forward, both for charities, but also for us to work collectively where we can really accelerate that growth.
Sure. A lot, as you say, there's lots there. But tell me, why do you think, you mentioned there that people might have decided to give but not got round to writing their will? What do we know about why people who could leave a gift choose not to? Is it because they haven't got round to it? They don't know how to do it? Or is it just a general hesitation, family dynamics, or is there something else going on there that's stopping people from actually putting pen to paper?
Well, I know certainly I was very guilty of not writing my will when I first should have done. Perhaps when my kids were born, when I got married, all those key trigger moments we know people really are supposed to write their will. It became that sort of half-written document in the back of the very busy bookshelf behind me, something that I really should have completed long before I did. And I think that's a really common thing for so many people, largely because there are some big questions you need to think about when you write your will. And if you do think about those trigger moments, whether it's marriage, whether it's divorce, whether it's bereavement, loss of somebody, all those moments, there's an awful lot going through people's heads, and there are some big questions to think about. And so I think that is perhaps one of the biggest challenges. So what we need to do as charities is continue to inspire, to continue to build those relationships. But what's also really important is that those prompts are there within the will writing journey. So when it's the right moment for people to think about writing their wills, they don't forget, because what we see from our data is there's probably 2 key reasons why people don't leave a gift to charity. One is perhaps they don't think it's something that they can do alongside their loved ones. They want to make sure their family's looked after. And so that's where, of course, that message around family first is so important in legacy marketing and legacy fundraising. But the other one is just it slips people's minds. in the heat of the moment where so many other things are running through their mind, how can we make that a little bit more prominent? How can we ensure that the option to leave a gift really is front and foremost? So I think those are the two key reasons that can hold people back.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's quite easy. It's easy, isn't it, for people just to push it down the road and say it's something I'm going to do and just not get around to doing it. So it's how we get over that hurdle really important. Another thing we talk about a lot on this show is sort of changing the changing sort of societal dynamic around young people and Gen Z, and how we as fundraisers can reach younger generations, and how they are raising money, how they're donating differently to previous generations, to older generations. Are younger generations thinking about legacy giving differently to older donors? Is that something you're seeing? And should fundraisers and charities be adapting their messaging accordingly so that they can reach young people better?
That's where I think it gets really interesting. And we have to pause for a moment and put things in context, because, of course, if you're approaching younger people about leaving a gift in a will, you hope very much they're going to live a long, healthy life from that point onwards. And therefore, it's going to be a long wait. It's not going to be a quick return. And yet, we do know that those generations will continue moving on through. So when it comes to future-proofing legacy income, it's really important that we do continue to warm up those younger audiences and have them thinking about legacy giving as indeed a social norm. And from our consumer tracking studies, I mean, the signs again are really positive, and we're seeing some really fascinating generational shifts, because as you'd expect, older generations are much more likely to have already written a will. But when we look at a comparison of older generations with wills and younger people with wills, actually it's those younger people with a will in place who are more likely to have included a charity in it. So in other words, there's greater propensity for legacy giving amongst those younger audiences. I think for them, they're starting to see this as a very natural way of giving in their lifetime. Charities have been bigger and better and bolder perhaps about talking about legacies. And so I think it's really positive to see that shift coming through. You asked about what that might mean for charities' approach. Is, I think when it comes to messaging, there might be a little bit of a shift perhaps there, but I think perhaps the key one is more around the channels that charities might be using. So digital, for example, while that can be really effective actually engaging older audiences, I think it'll be crucial for engaging and warming up that younger audience as it comes through. But at its core, legacy fundraising really is about relationships and great storytelling, I think. So if a charity can really succeed in conveying their passion for their work, the needs for long-term support, the difference it's really going to make, and setting out a vision for what each and every one of us can achieve on the back of a legacy and the difference we can make, then I think that's the key to engage people no matter what age they are. You know, if there's a cause that we care about as individuals, it's such a powerful thing to think that we can be part of its future even when we're gone.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think it's really, really important that message gets passed down to different audiences of different ages by charities. And I think it's quite a trap that perhaps charities fall into quite often. I know that from personal experience in terms of charities I work with. When it comes to legacy campaigns, quite often they go, right, let's do an email campaign. Let's just target everyone over 50, 55. And then they do their mail shot to that audience. But perhaps they're missing a trick then by not sending that same messaging or adapting that messaging to their younger audiences as well. So I'm sure there's loads that we can talk about on that front as well. And we'll dig into some of that actually with Vix and Kay a little bit later on. But listen, with all this in mind, everything we've talked about, where do you see the biggest challenges and opportunities over the next 5 years in particular?
Tim, I'm so pleased you asked that question, because funnily enough, we've just done a survey of our members and talking with them about what they see as being the key challenges and opportunities. And the findings really were quite clear, and perhaps no surprise. I think the biggest challenge for charities now is around the economic situation. So the cost of living pressures and wider financial insecurity it does make life more complicated for us all. It can impact legacy values, certainly. I mean, they've been holding up really well, but we need to be mindful of that. And the other thing is, of course, it can impact people's propensity for giving. It might make them feel that they aren't able to give. I've had some really interesting conversations with who you might perceive to be really quite wealthy individuals who are nobody's feeling wealthy anymore. So being mindful of that backdrop. It also means, of course, for fundraisers and fundraising budgets, you know, those budgets are increasingly squeezed. And during moments like that, where there is so much pressure for sort of short-term income, it's harder to make the case for legacy fundraising. That can be really challenging. Actually, we do have some tips and advice on that on a member of charity's website, though. So if anybody is struggling with that, do please take a look. So you asked too about opportunities for charities around legacy fundraising. And I think the key one really is, of course, the intergenerational wealth transfer. So with baby boomers coming on through now, we're starting to see income coming through from that generation. This is a large generation of people who are warm to charities and who often have considerable wealth. It is also important that we're mindful that those people are not immune to the same economic pressures and the same concerns about will their family be okay in this, very fast changing world. But still, this generation of baby boomers are very warm to legacy giving, and it's great to start to see, I think, some of that income coming through and pepping up the legacy income market. Another thing that came through in the survey that we conducted with our members was they're seeing more support internally for legacies. And that is really, really crucial, because if there was just one factor that determines legacy success, according to the findings from our membership, is actually the organizational buy-in, is that one factor that really can create a crucial difference when it comes to legacy fundraising, being a really big enabler for legacy growth. And the other point that I'd make is one around high value legacies. I think legacies have traditionally been a mass market part of fundraising. But if we can just achieve a small growth in this space, that really could have a big impact. So I think the opportunity is there for legacy and philanthropy teams to work more closely together. And we're starting to see that, which is great, to ensure the legacy conversation is alive and not hidden for this really key audience. So if charities can inspire this audience alongside their wider supporter base, I think that really could be quite transformative for many organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. Lucinda, you've given us a great overview there. Thank you so much. It's such a fascinating subject and such a great success story that I'm really delighted to be able to dedicate the show to it today. And our guests today are Kay Harrison, Loyalty Action Planner at About Loyalty, and Victoria Friar, Head of Supporter Services at Air Ambulance Kent, Surrey and Sussex. And I met them both at Fundraising Convention back in June, where I sat in on a session they gave in which they discussed the impact of effective mass communications and supporter engagement on legacy giving, sharing both practical examples and fascinating data-based insight, which I love. It was an eye-opening overview of how planning engagement over a lifetime can pay dividends in the long term when it comes to legacy giving. So I was delighted to sit down with them both after their session to find out more. Kay and Victoria, welcome to Let's Talk Fundraising. It's lovely to see you again. We met back in June at Fundraising Convention, seems like a lifetime ago now. And back then we talked, you talked, I didn't. I came along and saw you guys talk and all things legacies and loyalty. A great presentation, and it was lovely to see a bit more, learn a bit more about what both of you do in terms of the charity and about legacy as well. So let's dive into legacies in a bit more sort of general terms and also touch on some of the things that you guys talked about on the day as well. And Kay, first off, legacy giving is obviously one of the biggest income streams in the UK charity sector. Back at convention at the benchmarking session as well, we also saw exactly how significant that is to the sector today. And yet it's still surprisingly under-discussed. How significant is it, and do charities generally treat it, do you think, as the strategic priority that it needs to be?
Oh, two great questions. I mean, in short, I could probably say yes and no, but that would be a very short podcast. Yes, it is so significant, and we're seeing so many statistics about this opportunity that's coming down the road for many, many charities. We're speaking to an increasing number of charities who are looking to integrate their legacy activity into their wider supporter experience, which is where our area of expertise lies. I often quote somebody who said in a workshop 2 years ago now, she said, all roads lead to legacy. And I like to think about that when we're talking about all these different products and journey paths. Legacy isn't its own product. It's sort of woven into the supporter experience sort of more broadly, really, So I absolutely think it should be more of a priority for more organisations in the sector.
Absolutely. And Vix, From Air Ambulance Kent, Surrey and Sussex perspective, when did legacy giving start to feel like something you needed to really take seriously and invest in, rather than just something that happens in the background?
Yeah, so it's always, like so many charities, it's always been something that kind of trickles along in the background. And every now and again, you kind of pop an ad in your magazine that goes legacies, and that's sort of it. So the case with support was made probably coming on for a couple of years ago now, maybe a year and a half, for a dedicated legacy fundraising manager to have a position at KSS. And it's one of those situations where it's better late than never, you know, and we're really fortunate. We have the most amazing legacy fundraiser called Charlotte, and she just came on, took it under her wing. Actually used to be a supporter experience manager, so you know her absolute background is in those relationships and kind of bringing that forward. So she was the right person at the right time for the right job, and yeah. So since then, we've introduced it in a really invested way. We've really focused on what the message is, what it looks like, how it can be communicated most effectively. So not just through generic channels, but also, for example, like at our Carol concert, where we have big screens up, you know, at the event, and while people are queuing for their mince pies and stuff, there'll be a slide that crops up that, you know, just discreetly but poignantly and says to people, you know, if this is something you're considering, here is our information, just so that we're making sure we're doing that drip feeding in a really proactive way, so we're in the right place at the right time for people when they think of us.
I was fascinated. We'll dig into some of the comms a little bit later, because I was really fascinated at convention when you showed the details of all the different proactive and reactive comms that you do across the sort of lifetime journeys that supporters have. And that's really interesting, because I've come from charity backgrounds where I've worked in charities where 9 times out of 10 the legacy ask has been aimed at people of a certain age, so you know that retired community and people of that older age, whereas obviously that's not necessarily the case anymore. And it's been interesting to hear from you both about how that journey changes. Kay, from a legacies as a whole, looking at the sector right now, tell me a little bit about how things are changing and how you've seen them change. It's fascinating to hear about the loyalty score, how that works and how you've seen that change. What kind of picture is it painting at the moment?
That's right. So we have a legacy intentions module as part of the survey that we send out, and we're seeing more and more charities take part in that. And as part of that module, one of the questions we ask supporters when we're asking them about their intentions to leave a gift in their will, with their permission to do so, I might add as well, so people can opt into this part, is we ask them about their barriers to giving, if they are not already leaving a gift, if there was any particular reason why. And surprisingly, we'll see a relatively high proportion of those people say, I didn't know that was an option, or it didn't occur to me. So naturally, there's perhaps a higher proportion of people who will say, I would like that money for my family and my needs. That's probably always going to rank the highest. But we're seeing this strange, maybe not strange, but an opportunity that might not have occurred to a number of charities, which is that their supporters simply don't know that this is an option that's available to them. So as we're seeing the legacy opportunity grow across the sector, we're also seeing insights from the supporters that we work with that say, well, there's a disconnect here and we can help to join those dots and grow that legacy awareness, which we've heard from Vix is something that KSS are doing very, very well.
I was actually also fascinated at your presentation when you had touched on the fact that the percentage of people who give who are lapsed, and I know that term lapse is perhaps not the right one to use, but people who maybe once were regular donors or had a commitment in some way to a charity, but maybe that's not the case anymore, are potentially more valuable than some of those who are currently have that relationship with the charity.
That's right, yes. So we split our results down by product and by giving activity, and what we saw is that almost consistently for every single type of product we looked at across cash, regular giving, raffles, lottery, supporters who no longer support in that way, we'll call them lapsed, they are more likely to leave that gift in the will than your active supporters. And there's sort of hypotheses around there that maybe, let's say somebody has wound down their raffle activity, perhaps they have that final bequest in mind, or perhaps that is something that's a little bit closer. And it's, again, coming back to that disconnect, there's so many charities out there who might almost write off those lapsed supporters, if that's not too strong a way to put it. They'll say, right, we can't contact them anymore, they've ended their support. And there's so much more to the supporter experience than just making those financial asks, whether it's something like a thankathon where you can show your gratitude or share what you're being up to and how they can continue to support your mission in a non-financial way. There's ways you can keep those lapsed supporters in the loop so that when they approach that point of making a legacy gift or making that bequest in their will, well, you're in the right place at the right time, as Vic said.
I think it's so important. So often, I think charities just write off those lapsed supporters.
Right.
They've gone, therefore, we're not communicating with them anymore.
Exactly. And then you look at the insights and it says exactly the opposite thing. Yeah. It's fascinating.
Fascinating. And Vix, from KSS's perspective, what does your legacy programme look like at the moment? And are you including those lapsed donors in that programme?
To be fair, Charlotte could probably speak to that much more effectively than I can. From a broader perspective, though, on how we're communicating with all of our supporters about legacy, we are drip feeding it like any decent charity should, but also we're trying to be more strategic in the way that we are communicating with the people that we know are on our legacy pipeline. So, if they're pledges, for example, they've confirmed that they're leaving a gift in their will, then Charlotte is as hands-on as they want her to be. She'll meet up with people and really make sure they stay in the loop and they continue feeling the love. I think it fascinates me. I've worked for several charities where the logic is, they've told us they're leaving a gift in their will. Don't touch them. What if they change their mind? One surefire way for someone to decide they're going to not leave you the biggest gift of their life is that you went silent and totally ghosted them.
Yeah.
So
I've also had people this fear of over communicating.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
Exactly. And you know what? People will tell us. And I realise I'm going off piste on your question, as is my way. But that is so important, is to have that feedback loop with your supporters. So if something like a legacy journey, you can only personalise so much and you can only be direct to people to a certain amount of capacity, really. So there comes a point where if you're not getting it right, make sure that you have the channels and multiple channels available where they can get in touch with you. They trust you enough to be able to have the conversation. And they also trust you enough to say, what, we'll change the way we talk to you. That's totally fine. And you will get it right immediately and meet the needs that they have. Because all of our supporters are different. So with legacy, have the privilege of getting to know these people and because of the numbers you're usually talking about, you can have those conversations with people. So do it, get to know them, understand what it is that they love about your charity and the things that make them tick and how they want you to enable this journey for them.
Sure. Just listening to you there, you used the words commitment, passion, trust, and
my ears were tingling. Yeah, they
were. All three of those came up in the presentation. Tell us a little bit about the Chase Index, how it works, and what the data shows us about those kind of connections that people need in order to feel like they can and want to leave a legacy gift to a charity.
Certainly. So the Chase Index has been running for a number of years now, and that means we've spoken to hundreds of thousands of supporters. We've been able to really drill down into what is most important to spark those feelings of, we call it loyalty, but passion, allegiance to a cause. And those three drivers are, as we've heard, commitment, satisfaction, and trust. In short, commitment, the most important in the legacy context certainly, is that shared mission, that shared purpose, that vision that you have for the future that you and your supporters are making possible together. So it's about feeling the love. It's about having that sort of that why that you are working towards. We think of it as a bit of a spark. So if somebody feels that spark, that what you do matters to them, that's something that's going to connect them to your cause, and then you can use the supporter experience to I'm getting a bit poetic here, but fan that spark into a flame, and then that flame is what's going to help you drive forward loyalty. But then we also talk about supporter satisfaction, being treated really well. Everything Vix was just saying about listening to their requests, meeting their needs, asking for feedback and then acting on it, not just filing it away somewhere, that's also really important. And then thirdly, we talk about trust, and that's not just here's how we spent your money. It's not just demonstrating impact. It's also acting with integrity. So doing the right thing, showing up, being honest, accountable, transparent. I think that's important, across all charities in the sector.
And where are you finding, Vix, that in terms of legacies that are coming in and the pledges that are coming in, what kind of people, what kind of supporters are they coming from, and has that changed at all in recent years?
I mean, it's everyone from across the board. I think, like you were saying kind of right at the start, it's easy to stereotype your average legacy giver, but I think we know from sector stats that type is changing. People are having conversations more openly earlier in life, and so it isn't possible to put a type. But probably the closest we could get for us is that a lot of them live in Kent, Surrey and Sussex. But that's hardly surprising because of where we are. We do have a high proportion of supporters who support us because of a personal connection.
Yeah.
But that said, one of the really interesting insights that we've seen from Chase Index is that people are predictably passionate about us when they have a direct experience, as I do with KSS. It's like Superman is landing and trying to save you or the person you love. And that's huge. That's something that stays with you for life.
I'm fascinated by I can clearly see that link there between if you've had your life saved by the air ambulance, or somebody who has, your reason to give is absolutely central to that. Fascinated as well by when you were talking about the fact that you're seeing that the power of sharing stories means that people who don't have that personal connection are still feeling connected enough to want to give. So is that and how is that sort of, how are you seeing that on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, it's with those stories where people do have that personal connection with us, that they can all tell the most emotional, incredible, poignant story about the moment that the air ambulance showed up in that person's life. What we are finding from our Chase Index research, though, as well, is that people are really moved by the stories of those people, and they find that really inspirational. And part of the reason behind that is that not everybody is helped by the air ambulance. Thank goodness, And as we always say to people, we hope that we never have to come to you. We hope you never need our help. But if you do, then it's donations that mean we will land there and be by your side at the moment when you need us the most. And that's really powerful. That's a message that we put across. And I often say to people within fundraising, I've been in the sector for longer than I care to admit, more than 20 years now. And I think people give either to say please or to say thank you. And the air ambulance is the first charity that I've worked for where actually it's significant amounts of both, because if people have been directly helped, either themselves or a loved one, by the air ambulance, that thank you is there for the rest of their lives. It's, even as is in my case, when my friend sadly died, I know that the best of the best could not save his life, and there is some comfort in that. For other people, though, it's that please ask of, if ever I fell off a roof, if I was in a horrendous accident on the M25, if all manner of things that could happen, if I went into cardiac arrest in the middle of a field, I need you to be there. I need you to be able to come from the sky and save my life, or at least give me the best possible chance at survival. So there is a real mix, between our pledger families and between our donors in general. You really see that thank you and that please resonating just about as loudly as each other. So it's interesting for me as a bit of a fundraising dinosaur that I get to see something kind of different in this lot.
On the last episode of the show, we also talked a bit about small but mighty charities, and how being local is actually a real benefit to charities like Air Ambulance in terms of its various local regional versions. Have you seen that to be the case when it comes to legacies as well? People feel a real connection because it's a local service helping local people.
I think so. I think also because we're so tangible as well. It is powerful. Even if you haven't actually seen the helicopter land, it's a thing that even for us as staff, there's a member of my team that's been at KSS for 25 years, and our helicopter will land at the Rochester office to refuel, and just like everybody else, she is there at the window going, wow.
It's a helicopter outside, of course.
It is. You don't see it every day. You just don't. But yeah, I think the local aspect really plays into that as well. And, we know back from what feels like ages ago with, the original credit crunch that a lot of us remember as fundraisers, that everybody's worlds shrank, in the same way as happened with COVID, that suddenly your priorities are you and yours. And in the same way that, hospices have follow a similar pattern to air ambulances, when people think local and they think about, if I needed help tomorrow, where will that help come from? What could I not live without? Who would I need by my side and by my children's sides? And so, particularly in the economic environment that we see ourselves in at the moment, people are watching the purse strings a little more closely, and where they are able to support a charity, they're thinking, right, what are the ones that really get me, that I am in love with? And that's the same logic applies to the people who are going to leave us a gift in their will. So it all comes down to relationship fundraising. You get to know your supporters as much as you can. You get them to feel that love. And if the time ever comes where they've got to make a decision of whether they can support you or not, they know you love them,
Yeah, and absolutely. And Kay, building on that, I remember you saying in the session that building legacy giving is not necessarily about asking more, but adding value. Mm-hmm. What does that actually look like? Can you explain that philosophy a bit more?
Yeah, I mean, sharing the love is absolutely right. It's a two-way street, isn't it? It's a reciprocal relationship. Yeah. So adding value absolutely needs to be centering the supporter in your approach to that. And it's going to look and feel different for everybody. So the first place to start is simply by asking, by listening, and then responding to that feedback. So whether that's something as simple as adding a bit more of a feedback system to your communications, those regular surveys, regular touch points, running focus groups, but also putting in an opportunity at every sort of, maybe not every, but wherever you can, to collect that spark, that motivation, that reason why someone's giving to you. So whether it is the local connection, the personal experience, or maybe it's down to someone's faith, their shared values, the ideals they want to see in the world. There's like a rainbow of reasons why someone might choose to give to you, and it's working out sort of what each person's personal rainbow looks like. And the only way you're going to find that out is by asking, and then that is going to help you to tailor their own journey, their communications, and that's going to help to add value to their legacy consideration journey.
I love that, collecting the sparks.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, painting a rainbow.
I'm going to use that.
Personal rainbow, collecting sparks. We're being very poetic today.
Yeah.
We are.
Yeah. Inspired by the convention, I think.
Oh, definitely. You can't leave this convention and not feel inspired and a little bit twinkly.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely right. And Vic, tell me a bit about sort of bringing some of that to life. And I remember you talked about Thankathon, which amazed me. 14,000 handwritten cards. Yeah. 14,000 handwritten cards. That is
a lot, right?
Incredible. Yeah. I mean, thank goodness it was. If it was in my handwriting, no one would be able to see what those said. But anyway, hopefully people with good handwriting. But tell me a bit about that and about some of the other sort of touch points that you've introduced that are making a difference.
Yeah. So to pick up on the very first thing you said about, thankfully it not being your handwriting because it's terrible. Actually, sometimes it's the people with the worst handwriting because it's personal. We want it to look. You
don't want it to look like some kind of printed out script. Yeah.
No. Exactly. So that is really important.
There's hope for me yet with the handwriting. Okay.
Yes. Come along and help next month. So for us, it's that kind of, it's constant communication with our supporters. And I don't mean constant as in, relentless every single day, but we've worked really hard to make sure that our monthly email e-newsletter that goes out to supporters, to all of our emailable supporters, is consistent in its format, in its tone, in its branding. So rather than being just an absolute scroll-a-thon with everything we've achieved in the last 4 to 6 weeks and just chucking everything at it, it's a much more refined email now. And that means that people can scroll down to the sections that they know and love. If they just want to hear about what events are coming up, if they just want to hear about something, some innovation we've brought in, they're familiar with the layout of it now, and that's great. And because it's on an email, we can track what it is that they're engaging with. So part of that thank you experience, which isn't quite in place now, but is the space I want to move into, is that where we're tracking those things that the people, that our readers are engaging with, and we're being able to pick up conversations with them, particularly around, specific funding opportunities, or if we've got the helicopter coming to a heli hike and we know that X amount of supporters constantly click on the behind the scenes stories. How does the engine work? How do we keep dust out of the engines? What's the seating like on our aircraft? All the weird and wonderful things. We can message those people and say, come and check out the helicopter. You can actually see it inside it at heli hike. So there's an opportunity there for us, I think, to make the most of that tangible asset as much as we can.
I love the story of the lady who thanked you by sending you a thank you card with the check inside it.
Yes. Yeah, said thank you for saying thank you with another thank you. And so we said thank you, and then thankfully it stopped because
Actually, wasn't any check. That was an £11,000 check. £10,000.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, that's enormous. It's enormous, and it goes to show we really struggled to convey return on investment. This is the real world, and we're watching every single pound as charities. So it's a tough sell to ask for a budget to send out a load of post with something that you've got to design as well and have printed with no fundraising ask on it. That's really hard. So to be able to say, not only can it sometimes, have these little rays of light that come through, but also look at our data. These people aren't going anywhere for the most part. And,
yeah, absolutely.
It's not helping. So there's something in that.
Yeah, indeed.
It's a cumulative impact, isn't it? It's not just one card here, one phone call there, all these things. They're all part of the picture. And it's playing the long game, isn't it?
And that segues nicely onto my next question, because I wanted to ask you about the length of relationship with an individual. And does someone need to have been connected to a charity for years before legacy giving becomes a realistic conversation to have with them? Or can the journey happen more quickly? What's the data showing?
I'd say not necessarily, although I'd definitely get my hand slapped by our data team for just confidently saying that, so I could go and have a look. But certainly we can explore loyalty by tenure within the insights that we have. So we do look at that with different charities, and sometimes you can see spikes in loyalty earlier on, but then perhaps their supporter experience lets that dip, or sometimes it's the other way around, which is that you see a higher drop-off within the first few years, but then if someone stays after that drop-off, they're sort of set for life. So it kind of varies from person to person, but that's an interesting question. Yeah, when does that legacy journey? How sort of soon can we see that conversion? I'd have to bring Sally and Roger on the podcast to let you know.
Do you think the charities are put off by the prospect of potentially legacy? Obviously, regular giving is and other forms of fundraising, challenged events and door to door and all that kind of stuff. Very immediate money coming in next month, that kind of thing. Do you think charities perhaps put off by the prospect of that longer term commitment to engagement and nurturing and that kind of thing?
I'd say that's part of the reason why we're here, why we exist, is to give them the support, the data and the insight that they need to, point to, share around and say, this matters, this really matters. Because if we're constantly chasing our tail and just seeking those short-term returns, whether that's in retention or in acquisition, that's not going to pave the way to more sustainable income, which from our more long-term research we've seen is entirely possible by investing in growing people's loyalty.
Yeah, I think the benchmarking survey showed exactly that as well, in terms of the amount of money coming in from legacies is disproportionate compared to the amount of investment in terms of acquisition across charities. Yeah. Vix, when you're targeting people and you're putting messages out through your various comms channels, through the newsletter, through the magazine as well. I'm fascinated as someone who began his career in magazines. I'd love to see that you still got magazines. So well done on that. Brilliant. Because so many charities don't have magazines anymore. So I'm really pleased to see that you do. But when you're writing that messaging, who are you writing it for in those magazines? Who in your mind's eye is that target audience for that legacy specific messaging?
So our magazine is sent out to 25,000 supporters. We do it twice a year. And the content really varies. It follows a similar format across the 28 pages. For legacies, this is our latest edition was the first time that we had a 2-page article about legacy. And we really wanted it to feel warm and informative and to be a stepping stone. I'm not a fan of just, like with any fundraising ask, you don't want to chuck absolutely everything at it, because then you've got nothing for your next edition. And legacy, by its nature, evolves. There's new ways to talk about it and different offers and products you're going to put to people. So we know that our readers are engaged. We know that they like receiving our magazine, and they know that we know that they are warm to asks that we make within that. We try to make it as tangible as possible, so people can reach out to us. We have a picture and the contact details of our lovely Charlotte, so that it's as personal as possible. And then we just see what sticks. I'd love to say we have a formula that works for legacy, but we've only been really investing in it for a year, so we're still kind of testing the water and seeing what works. We're still waiting to see what the uptake is from the recent legacy article that we released in the magazine as well. Email is quicker, it's immediate. Obviously, we can straight away see that 365 people clicked on that legacy article, and that automatically gives us a list of people that we can reach out to and go, hi, you look like you're interested in this. But also, when you're looking at a mailing list of 72,000, can we do better than 365? Yeah, probably. So let's try out new things. We're very much in the testing phase.
Yeah. Let's cast let's look down the road a little bit. Look to the future. Let's class it almost like an interview question. Looking ahead 5-10 years, what do you think the legacy landscape is going to look like in 5-10 years? We're talking more gifts, bigger gifts, more people generally being aware, and more pledges. First off, what do you think your future? Well, not your future personally, but what do you think the future for legacy giving looks like?
Yes, I'd make a pitch for more awareness. I hope. I feel that the conversation's getting louder, and again, maybe that's because we're at a convention, so there are a lot of conversations happening around legacy giving. But in general, I think having that heightened awareness, the fact that gifts in wills exist, a lot of people provide free support to help people write in their wills. So I'd like to think that we're going to see more gifts, or certainly more pledges, in 5 to 10 years, and hopefully we're going to see that process being better integrated across the supporter experience, which means people at a younger age, or perhaps an earlier point in their relationship with that charity, that awareness is going to be there in a way that it just isn't in 2026.
Sure. More people moving up to Super 7 level on that scale?
I'd like to think so, yes. People who are super loyal to their cause. Yeah, I'd say so.
Fantastic. And Vix, what about KSS in terms of the next 5 to 10 years? Where do you see things?
I'd love to see legacy income just going stratospheric, and my logic is that it's been trickling along with very little investment for ages. So now that we are strategically investing in it, I'd love to see that start paying off. I think also I'd love to see that internally, we're not bad at talking about legacy giving internally, but I'd like to see more structure. Like I gave the example about how we promote it at our carol concert events, but I'd love to see everyone internally not just capable of having those conversations confidently, but also being able to identify where there might be an opportunity for deeper engagement, so that actually our legacy team, as I'm sure it will be by then, can come in and have those conversations with someone and take that relationship into a different level, whatever it is that the individual feels is appropriate. And I think culturally, the bigger picture of us as a country is that I don't think it's just me, and I don't think, from what you were saying, Kat, I don't think it's just because we've been to convention and we've heard from all these amazing fundraisers in the sector. I think there genuinely is a real change in the public perception and ability to discuss gifts in wills, and the acknowledgement that there will be an end at some point for everyone, and the best thing we could be doing is telling our loved ones what our wishes are. If nothing else, if it's the charities you love, whether that's a legacy that you want to leave a gift to, so that it doesn't come as an absolute shock to your children that this charity rocks up in your will, that you're openly discussing that with them, is a really important thing. Not just so it's not a shock to them, but also hopefully it will mean there's less gifts in wills for charities that are challenged in future, because there will be some understanding. But also the wider context that, who people, the charities that people want donations collected for in their memory, for example. Back at convention, we heard this amazing example about the much loved program and software that people can use. That it's this wonderful way of people leaving a tribute to their loved one, having a charity light a candle for them. And that all comes into the conversation of legacy giving, because we know that in-mem givers are, I think it's 3 times more likely to leave a gift in their will to a charity. So that's really important for us to manage all of those relationships within that societal shift, and to be ready that as that's growing, we're going to grow as well alongside it.
It's really, really interesting. Kay, and your thoughts on that in terms of the technological landscape, digital wills and all those kind of things. How much of an impact is that going to bring, do you think, over the next few years as well?
Well, certainly making it easier, reducing that friction means you've got less chance for those feelings of dissatisfaction, which sometimes it's out of the charity's hands, especially when you start to work with additional suppliers, contacts and so on. Those moments of kind of conflict are inevitable, and the kind of more work that we can take to reduce those, it's going to grow those feelings of, we talked about satisfaction earlier, so surprise, delight, happiness, joy, these positive feelings. And the more opportunities we can give people to associate those feelings with the charity, that's going to open up the door for better experiences and the great intention to leave a legacy gift.
Been lovely to speak to you both. Last question for each of you. Vix, first off, if there's one thing a fundraiser or supporter care manager listening to this could do differently from next Monday, from next week, in terms of supporting legacy giving, what would it be?
Don't be frightened of having legacy conversations with people, whether that's direct, face-to-face, mentioning things on the phone if it's appropriate. To have those conversations, the worst thing that's going to happen is somebody says, I'm not interested, in which case you make a note and you don't send them legacy information. Just don't keep asking them. If they've told you, if they change their mind, they'll come to you. But if they've told you, no, I'm okay, thanks, then, stop. Just stop.
Just check that box in the CRM.
Yeah, but if you get to know them, you're going to know what drives them, and you're going to know that legacies are something they're thinking about. So go ahead and have that conversation.
Brilliant. And Kay, and for a charity that hasn't really invested in legacy fundraising yet, perhaps because they think it's perhaps due to their size, and maybe think it's not within their reach, what would you say to them?
I say to them, gosh, it's absolutely within their reach. It's within everybody's reach, of all size or shapes or structures. And as Vix was just saying there, sometimes it can be just about putting those feelers out, whether that is the bottom of a donation form, whether it's a phone call, whether it's putting a banner on the website, finding a touch point that works within the scope and the capacity that you have to start small. It's there, and then people know they can come to you when they're ready. It's about, I'm going to end where we started, all roads leading to legacy.
Brilliant way to finish. Perfect soundbite to finish off. Thank you very much. We'll put the links to both your organisations and to yourselves in our show notes. Anybody wanting to know more, to get in touch with Vix or Kay, then head to the show notes. All the information will be there. But thank you both for joining us today. It's been brilliant.
Thank you so much for having us.
This is the part of the show where we take a look at some of the things making headlines in the fundraising world right now. And first up this week is the important news that the Chartered Institute of Fundraising has a limited time offer of 10% off individual membership. Paula O'Neill, Head of Member Engagement, will talk a little bit more about the benefits of individual membership and how you can access the discount so you can take the next step on your fundraising career journey.
Whatever stage you're at in your fundraising career, you don't have to figure it out alone. The Chartered Institute of Fundraising individual membership gives you access to a full range of member-only benefits, including webinars, a fortnightly fundraising newsletter, which is packed with the latest sector news. You'll also get a monthly subscription to Fundraising Magazine and exclusive discounts on short courses, qualifications and events, as well as access to the Wisdom app, which is a physical and mental health support. This includes wellness tools and a confidential 24-hour, 7 days a week helpline. Right now, if you join, you can get 10% off by adding in the MEM10 code during your application. Memberships start from as little as £9.75 a month. Visit ciof.org.uk/individual membership to find out more.
And next up this week, Regare, the fundraising think tank, has released a new report on the disintermediation of charities from giving called Death by 1,000 Cuts, how other actors are displacing charities from giving, asking for support and providing help. Here is a brief audio message from Ian McQuillan discussing it.
My name is Ian McQuillan of Regare, the fundraising think tank. We have a new white paper out that was published last week. It's called Death by 1,000 Cuts, How Other Actors Are Displacing Charities from Giving, Asking for Support and Providing Help. Now, this presents a typology of non-profit disintermediation, and as the title implies, it's about how middleman charities are being cut out and replaced in their role of doing good. So when we think of disintermediation in charities, we tend to gravitate towards crowd fundraising and giving money directly to people in need. But what we have found is that charities can also get cut out of asking for money and in delivering services. In service delivery, this is increasingly by companies, and Death by 1,000 Cuts gives many examples of this happening. Regarding fundraising, though, there's disintermediation happening that we perhaps just don't realise is disintermediation. Things such as charity checkouts, personal giving apps, some types of workplace giving, and even sometimes household name crowd fundraising platforms can all cut fundraisers out of asking and stewarding donors. So we are seeing across the board a drop in giving to charities, and one of the Chartered Institute's objectives for the next decade is to grow giving. But what our understanding of disintermediation suggests is that people are possibly still just as generous as they always have been, but they're directing their pro-sociality in other directions, such as ethical shopping rather than giving to charity. So we could successfully grow giving over the next 10 years with hardly any of that growth ever going near a charity bank account. But if we believe that charities are still best placed to help people in need other than these other actors, then we need to find a way back into the processes and relationships from which we are currently being cut out to re-intermediate, in other words. So this new white paper is the first phase of a 4-phase collaboration with Kingston University Business School. Later this year, we'll publish further papers on the motives and reasons why people cut out charities, and then the ethical issues that arise from disintermediation. That'll be a third paper at the end of the year. Throughout 2027, we'll be working with the CIOF on a roadmap and toolkit to help charities re-intermediate into the processes and relationships they've been cut out from, and we'd really encourage you to get involved with us in doing that. But the first step is to find out what charities are being cut out of, and that's what this new white paper does, which you can download from regare.net/disintermediation.
And that's a wrap for episode 8 of Let's Talk Fundraising. A huge thank you to both Kay Harrison and Victoria Friar, of course, for giving us all hope for the future of legacy giving, as well as the realisation that we're probably not sending enough thank you cards. And thanks as well, of course, to Lucinda for joining me in the co-host chair today. I hope you enjoyed it, Lucinda, and all the very best of luck with Remember Charity Week.
Thank you so much, Tim. It's been fabulous to talk about legacy today. Absolutely my favourite topic. And for anybody who does want to find out more about what we're doing, both during Remember a Charity Week and at any other point during the year, please do take a look at our website at rememberacharity.org.uk. Thanks again, Tim. It's been great to be on the show.
No problem at all. And we'll put all the links in the show notes. Anybody wants to find out more, head to the show notes. All the links will be there. Now, if this episode has inspired you to think more about how you might approach your legacy campaigns, you can find all the links, as I've literally just said, in the show notes, including to Remember a Charity, About Loyalty and Air Ambulance Kent, Surrey and Sussex. And we'll also include LinkedIn links to all our guests so you can connect with them directly. And of course, we want to hear from you. How are your legacy campaigns performing? What kinds of supporter engagement are working well for you? You can send us a voice note or drop us an email to tell us all about it. All the details, as ever, are in the show notes. And of course, if you're enjoying Let's Talk Fundraising, please do take a moment to give us a follow and a 5-star rating on whatever platform you're listening on. It really does make a difference and helps other fundraisers to find us. We'll be back in a month's time with the next episode when we'll be revisiting fundraiser wellbeing as we move into what is, for many, get ready for this, the busiest time of year as we build up to the launch of Christmas campaigns. I know it's still summer, but we're still talking about Christmas. So until then, enjoy the rest of your summer and take care.